Kelly here, and I am participating in MISTI-May-nia. So today we're going to be making a card using the MISTI. We're also going to be using the Stitch Rectangle dies from Simon Says Stamp, the Happy die from Simon Says Stamp, the Cloudy Sky stamp set, and then the Magical Birthday. So this is the MISTI Mini. That's what I'm using, and I'm going to be doing some embossing. I'm going to warn you straight up front. This is a longer video. Grab your coffee, settle in. It's going to be a minute. It's an involved card. So I wanted to build a cloud night scene for my unicorn. So I've gone ahead and inked up, I used my embossing buddy bag first to make sure that nothing was going to stick there, and then I inked up with Versamark, and I forgot to mask off the bottom portion of the cloud. So I'm just going to wipe away the embossing powder where that line would be, because that does not suit my design, and that was my fault. You'll see that we have kind of a couple of different issues, but I will warn you, I never start over, and I will show you how to fix them. So there's that, right? So I'm going to go ahead and heat set that, and then I'm going to move on to the next cloud. So I cleaned it off in between, but it turned out it really didn't make a difference because the Versamark, like once it's on there, I couldn't get it off. So I'm kind of messing around here with how I want the clouds to be laid out. At first, I wasn't masking them. At first, I was just stamping them and wiping off the embossing powder where it didn't stick. But I learned very quickly, I'm working on Canson watercolor paper, by the way, that you could still see the lines, and you could still see the lines after I watercolored. So I did multiple layers, multiple mediums on this card. So if you're not, then you probably want to mask them so you're not getting Versamark all over and being able to see those lines on your card. So I went ahead and masked the first cloud so I could stamp my unicorn. I'm using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black because it's Copic safe. And I wanted two of her little feet to be behind the cloud, and that's why I had to stamp it here. One of the wonderful things about the MISTI, I'm stamping on the rough side of watercolor paper, and so I didn't get a great image. And with the MISTI, you can just stamp it as many times as you need to until you get a crisp, clear image, because your stamp never moves. So you don't have to worry about having to line it up again and again and again. Or if you get a poor impression the first time, it's like totally cool. Just stamp it again. I know people always say, I hear Jennifer McGuire say it all the time, well, I'll just line it, I'll look through the clear block and line it back up. And she does it, and she does it amazing. Every time I try to do it, something gets all cattywampus. I don't know what happens, but things go south, and my images never match up. So that's just me. If you're one of those people who doesn't have that problem, good for you. Like, that's fantastic. But I do. So the MISTI saves me a lot when I think that I will have, when I mess up stamping and I need to do it again. So I'm just going to keep stamping all of those clouds, heat embossing them as I go. This one I left in because you can see me pointing there. Somehow I got black ink on my cloud. I don't know how I did it. I don't know if I stamped a mask and then forgot to clean my stamp. But there is a very clear, straight dark line on the bottom of that cloud that is now going to be in the middle of all of my other clouds, which makes me very unhappy. But as you can see, we've already done all this stamping, embossing, masking, blah, 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 blah. I'm not redoing it. I'm just going to fix it. I'll show you guys how I do that when we get there. In this same Magical Birthday set, there's this little cloud with like starbursts coming out, and I still wanted the stars, but I didn't want that little cloud. I could have done this with the MISTI, but straight up I forgot. And then I had already taped my watercolor paper down to my board, and that was the last of my painter's tape. So I couldn't pull it back up and start again. So I moved the masks as I went. Speaking of masks, I'm using liquid Frisquet. I don't even know what that is. That's not a thing. Okay, don't look that up. Don't Google that. It's not a thing. Liquid Frisket by Grumbacher is totally a thing, which I love, and you should use that. So basically you just paint it on, and it will resist anything that goes on top of it. I didn't do all of the clouds. I just did the border, the unicorns, and the stars. And now I'm kind of spattering it on so that I'll have some blank white spots in the sky to act as other stars. Once that's dry, I'm going to go ahead and go in with my Zig clean color markers, and I'm going to just scribble them on. That's it. Like you can see me, I'm just wherever I want them to be. I'm just scribbling them on. You can scribble over the liquid frisket. You're not going to hurt it. You can paint over it. It's going to be fine. So I picked up some clean clear water, and then I just started moving the pigment around. You're going to see that I clean my brush a lot in between moving on to the next area, because these are super beautiful, vibrant colors, and I love these markers for backgrounds especially. But they bleed a lot, and they put down a lot of pigment. So it will saturate your brush. So if I just took like that dark blue and just kept painting, everything would be one shade of blue. I wouldn't get any pockets of pink. I wouldn't get any pockets of purple. Everything would just be that one shade of blue, which is not what I wanted. So once I've got the pigment around, moved around, usually with these I do 2 coats. That just seems to be to give me a more vibrant color, which is what I prefer. If you like something a little softer, then stop down the first layer. So I soaked up any of the extra water, made some areas a little lighter where I felt like it got a little heavy-handed, and then soften those edges out. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit that with my heat tool so I don't have to wait forever, because well, you can see this video is already almost 20 minutes long. In real life, this card took me almost 2 hours, which some people would be like, I would never spend 2 hours on a card. This is for my niece's birthday. She loves all things unicorn and ponies, so I don't mind spending the time for Chloe. Plus, yeah, I love card making, so like if I wasn't spending 2 hours on one card, I'd be spending 2 hours on 2 cards. So it doesn't matter to me. So I just did the same thing. Once everything was dry, I scribbled the color down and then went back in with my paintbrush and kind of did the same thing. The only thing that I did a little bit differently on my last round is, you'll see I'm just going to spread everything around there still, but I'm going to go ahead and take clean clear water and spatter it on there. And because everything is still kind of wet, now it's not soaking wet. I don't have like pools of water, but it is still wet. I can add in some clean clear water and it'll create those blooms in the sky. It's almost like the same kind of effect you would get if you used salt, where you put salt on and then let that dry and then you scrape the salt off and it has like those bleach spots. It's almost like the same kind of idea as that. It's just a little softer. And then I used W+9 shimmer spray just to dot that in. I spattered it on so that some areas would have shimmer. I'm going to go ahead and remove the liquid frisket. I just did it with my finger. It, comes up super easy, didn't tear my paper. So now all of that is off. And normally I, when it comes to any kind of like shading, like white shading, I prefer to use my Copics. I decided I was going to try to use the zigs to do it for my clouds. So the way that I go about it is I put my color down where I want my shadows to be my darkest. Then I added water to the areas that I wanted to be white, and I took the clean, clear water down to the pigment. That's what works for me. That's how I feel like I get the best blend. Now, the light gray that I started with was super light, so I decided to go back in with a dark gray. You can use these zig markers for wet on wet, but I have found that they don't put down a ton of pigment. So I wanted more pigment than that. I'm on my surface underneath is a Ranger craft mat. So I just scribbled the marker on there and then picked it up and added it where I wanted to add it. Do I think that the shading came out okay? Yes, I do. It came out okay, but it wasn't what I was looking for. I think that it's pretty. I think it's really soft, but you know me, my cards aren't soft. So we're still going to go in there with the Copics and do what we can with that. Plus you can still clearly see that gray line in the middle of my clouds. So I'm starting with my lightest color. This is a C1, and I'm going to go ahead and start building up those clouds. If you've watched my videos before, you've seen me do clouds. I prefer to do little half moons in them to give them the appearance of being really fluffy clouds, so that there's not like a ton of white space. But you do have to be careful with this because Copics will color your white embossing. And it can ruin your nibs. So you want to make sure when you're doing this, you're being very careful that you're not coloring over that white embossing powder. I do this pretty often. where I will cope a color next to embossing powder, so I'm pretty confident in my ability. If you don't do that often, just go slow. You know, just go slow. If you get Copics on your embossing, you can take it off with colorless blender or a little bit of alcohol, but understand that if you get it on your paper, it's going to pull that up too. So just proceed with caution. So here we're moving on to the next darkest color, which is a C3, and you can already see where that black line is starting to disappear just with the shading that we're adding, and it doesn't have to be all over dark. That's not how I'm getting rid of the line. This is funny. One of the things that I learned, and I actually learned it from watching Ink Master. No. Tattoo Nightmares. Tattoo Nightmares. I don't have any tattoos. Not that I have anything against them. I just don't know any. But I'm fascinated by their artwork. So when people come in and they have like a really gnarly tattoo and they totally want to get it covered up because it's like, I don't know, a picture of their baby daddy or something. One of the things that they talk about in cover-ups is that you don't have to go with a solid black, but you have to create a lot of contrast. You have to have your dark, and your highlights super white. And because of that, the way your eye perceives things will cover up the image that's underneath. So that is what I went with when I was trying to cover up that line. I wanted super white areas right next to super dark areas so that you wouldn't see that line that's straight across. And by the time it's all said and done, even though I know it's there, even I don't see it. So I was pretty happy with the way that it came out. I can never leave well enough alone. I think that the gray and white clouds are pretty, but I like color in my clouds. So I picked some very light pink, purple, and blue, and then I'm just randomly adding these in. You can do this part. You cannot do this part. You can do just one color. Maybe you just want a little bit of a blue tone or just a little bit of a pink tone. You can do whatever you want. I preferred to do kind of all three because I had all three in the sky. But I love the way these clouds came out. Like, I don't think I have been any happier with any other clouds that I have done. Just they seem like so full and fluffy, and that just makes me super happy. Plus, we got rid of that line, which also makes me super happy because I would have been mad at myself if I would have gone through all this and I wasn't able to get rid of it, especially since I intend on actually giving this away. So I'm going over the clouds with just my zero marker to kind of blend everything out. Again, that's something you can do or you don't have to do. For the stars, I'm using a Y000 and I'm coloring the circles and the stars the same way. I went back in with a Y02 for the bigger stars and just added a dot of that inside the larger images just to kind of fill them up. So I'm going back to the same grays for this unicorn. So let me tell you that I remember sitting in a hotel room with Heidi Krull. She's the owner of Simon Says Stamps. And we were talking about stuff. And she was like, I want a unicorn, but I want like a Lisa Frank unicorn. And all I could think was, Lisa Frank. Heidi, you just so dated us. Like, you just straight up dated us that we know what a Lisa Frank unicorn looks like. So I did not color my unicorn to look like a Lisa Frank unicorn, but I have to tell you I really, really wanted to. I didn't. I went with what I thought Chloe would want, but this cute unicorn will be making a comeback as a Lisa Frank unicorn at some point. Believe you me. So while I'm finishing up that coloring, I just want to talk a little bit about the MISTI-May-nia. Basically, they're giving away one Misty a day in the month of May, and I am so thrilled to be participating. Ileana has all of them posted on her blog by Sweet Petunia for the blog for there, all of the other places that you can win them or the winners list. I will put, if you're watching on YouTube, I will put a link to my blog, to her blog, and then also to Simon Says Stamp down in the description. If you come to my blog, the way to enter to win a mini Misty is just simply to leave a comment. And then the winner will be posted on my Sweet Petunia's blog as well as my own personal blog here in the upcoming week. So, okay, back to the coloring. For her hair, I did something a little different. Normally I do the blending, the highlights, the lowlights. This time I decided I was just going to draw strands. So I just drew a single line through the curves of her hair. Her mane. It's a mane, Kelly. It's clearly a unicorn. So I'm just drawing those little strands in, and then I'm going to fill up the images with the same colors that I would do if I was doing it the traditional way, where I leave the highlight in the center. But I'm going to be filling it up just by drawing those lines. So it's the same colors. All the same colors are still going to be there. I'm still going to have 4 colors like I traditionally do. I'm just going to have them as single strands. The reason that I opted to do it this way was, first of all, I color everything the same way every single time I color. And I've seen other artists do this, and it does give a different look. But I just felt like with her body being white, the clouds being white, that I didn't need a white highlight in a center, that I could fill up her mane, and it would be better served for the image to have a multicolored mane, but that was still a lot more solid. So that's how I guess I went about the coloring. And then I did the same, as I always do, the same order, lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest, until everything was full, and I was happy with the way that her mane looked. I keep wanting to call it hair. I have no idea why. I guess probably because that's what I'm normally coloring is hair and not manes, but whatevs. So here we're back to my lightest color, and you can see I'm going over all of the colors with my lightest color, like I'm still drawing the same strands, and the reason I'm doing that is because the lighter colors can sometimes soften the darker ones, and so then it's almost like a 5th color. So I get out my EK Success journaling pen, and I'm going to go ahead and outline the unicorn and the large stars. I didn't do the lines, I just did the large stars. This is a souffle pen, which is an embossing pen. So when you depress the tip on this, the ink will pool, and it dries opaque. So I used that to fill in any of the little circles where maybe my watercoloring got a little out of control, and then I used the white one to add in just a couple of more stars. So then I cut out the happy from black cardstock, that's a die cut, and now I'm lining up my sentiments. I'm back to using the mini-misti again. Sentiment stamping. I can't even tell you how many cards I have ruined in my card making career because I stamped a sentiment on a 1-layer card and I jacked it up. I mean, I cannot even, there are no words to tell you how frustrating that is. Like, and you just sit there in shock and awe and sheer horror of the fact of what you've just done to your card. With the Misti, I don't have to worry about it. So even though I'm stamping really delicate sentiments onto watercolor paper, I don't have to worry about it messing up because I can just keep stamping until I'm happy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere that happy die cut with just a couple little dots of Tombow Mono Multi Glue behind it. And then I didn't want it to be completely flat. Oh, P.S. I don't know if I even mentioned I die cut it with a stitch rectangle. Probably should have said that, right? But I did. And then I'm just going to add some craft foam behind it so that it is still a flat-ish card, but it will make it through the mail quite nicely with a little bit of raised edges. I'm just going to adhere that to a white card base, so it has like a nice little frame around it. And then I will be moving on to just a few more detailed things. Again, like I said, this is for my niece, so it doesn't bother me to take the time to do that. So this is Clear Wink of Stella. I'm going to put that on her unicorn horn, on her mane, and then on the stars, the larger stars in the background. And then I'm just going to add a few clear sequins from Pretty Pink Posh. This sentiment was kind of large, and it looked a little disjointed because it had so many different pieces to it, but putting those sequins there kind of helped pull everything together. So that's the card. Thank you so much for joining me. I do hope that you will head over to the blog and enter for your chance to win your own mini Misti, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.